So before I start talking about multiplication by tens, hundreds, and thousands, let's talk about a very fundamental law which is called the associative law of multiplication. So what is it? It's a very simple law. So let me write it out. Let's think about it. It says something like this, that 2 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 4, I'll explain this calculation to you in a second, is equal to 2 multiplied by 3 times 4. So what these are called parentheses. So these yellow things are called parentheses. And the parentheses mean essentially, and we'll talk about them more later on, that you're supposed to do this calculation first. So what I mean by that is, first on the left hand side, first multiply 2 by 3 to get an answer 6, then multiply 6 by 4 to get the answer 24. Here, on the right hand side, you're first supposed to multiply 3 by 4 to get the answer 12, and then multiply 2 by 12 to get the answer 24. Now, is that a miracle that the two answers are the same? I mean, is there a reason why 2 times 3 multiplied by 4 is the same as 2 multiplied by 3 times 4? And it's actually a mathematical fact. It's genuinely true. So let me try to give you a small story to convince you that this is true. So let's say you want to count some apples, and there are two tables. So here are two tables. Let me make the tables a bit higher. So here are two tables. Tables have to be a bit longer. So here are two tables, and each table is going to have uh, three baskets on it. So these are the three baskets: basket 1, basket 2, basket 3, basket 1, basket 2, basket 3. So there are three baskets in each table, and each basket has 4 apples. So let me put in the red apples inside the basket. So these are 4 apples inside the baskets. Okay, so now we want to count the number of apples. Well, there are two ways to count the number of apples. The first way to count the number of apples is to count the number of total baskets. So, well, you can see there is 1 3 on one table and another 3 on the other table. So I have two threes, and this is the two threes, which is the number of baskets. So 6 is the total number of baskets, which is exactly two threes. And then, since what I can do is that I have 4 apples in each basket, so I have 6 fours. So this is counting the number of apples, right? Another way of counting the number of apples is to consider different tables first. So now I'm going to count the number of apples on one table. So note that there are, here you're going to see that I have on table 1, on this table, I have 3 fours, right? When I want to count the apples, this is 1 4, this is 2 fours, this is 3 fours, and 3 fours are exactly what I have over here. So I've counted the number of apples on table 1, and since I have two tables, that's why the total number of apples have to be 2 12s, right? So that's what the answer has to be. So I don't know how I erased the 2. It was supposed to be 12. So now I can either count. So here on the left hand side, I'm counting first the total number of baskets and then counting the number of apples in each basket. On the right hand side, I'm first counting the number of apples on table 1, and then I'm counting the number of apples on table 2. Clearly, these two ways of adding have to lead to the same answer. So I can generalize this associative law and say that A multiplied by B multiplied by C has to be equal to A multiplied by B. And maybe I should erase this slightly so that I can write it a bit better. So I'll write it down again. So this is going to be A multiplied by B times C, and this was supposed to be 3 fours. Okay, so this is the associative law. So this right here is the associative law of multiplication. This will play an important role in what we're going to do. Another little law, although we have talked about it multiple times, is the commutative law. And the commutative law is very easy to remember. So let's say I have 6 stars, 6 crosses, and I've arranged them in 2 columns and 3 rows. So I can either count first the number of rows. So I'm going to count row wise, row 1, row 2, row 3. So I have 3 2s, and that's equal to, you can see this is equal to 2 3s, and that's really your choice whether which order you're going to multiply. So this is called the commutative law of multiplication. You already know about it, but I just wanted to remind you. This is called the commutative law of multiplication. Okay, so now we're going to use both the associative law and the commutative law. So I can write it more generally, that a times b is equal to b times a. That's the commutative law of multiplication. Okay, so now let's try to learn how to multiply with tens, hundreds, and thousands. So let's say I want to multiply. So I already know some answers. So let's say I know 16 threes are 48. Okay, so now I want to figure out what is 16 multiplied by 30. But 16 multiplied by 30 is just 16 multiplied by 3 times 10. And remember, I'm supposed to do 3 times 10 first. So 3 times 10 leads to 30, and then I'm supposed to multiply 16 with it. But by using the associative law, what I can do is I can multiply 16 threes first. So if I multiply 16 threes first, I get the answer 48 into 10, which is equal to 480. Now note, I'm actually just multiplying 16 by 3. So this is 16 threes, this is 16 threes, and this is 16 threes. Here's the 10, here's the 10, and the 0 is just coming along. Okay, so you can see that the 0 just comes along because the 0 is just representing the 3 tens, or the number of tens. Okay, so now let's say if I want to, and sorry, before I go on, please remember how I went from this step to this step required me to use the associative law of multiplication. Now let's say you can generalize. If I want to multiply 16 by 300, well, I can use, so this is really 16 multiplied by 3 into 100, and please note 3 into 100 is just so I'm just thinking that first you have to multiply 3 by 100 to give you 300, and then multiply the result by 16. But I can use the associative law of multiplication to multiply 16 by 3 first. So I get the answer 48 multiplied by 100, which leads to 4800. And you can see that I'm really just again multiplying 16 by 3 to give you the result 48, and the 2 zeros for the 300s are just coming along and not doing anything particularly interesting. So you can generalize. If I, without knowing anything, you can repeat the calculation, but now I can say 16 multiplied by 3000 ought to be equal to 48,000. And it's very easy to see that has to be the right answer. Okay, so now let's see if I want to multiply by, let's try another calculation. Let's say I already know that 2, let's say 2 multiplied by 5 is equal to 10. That's easy enough to do. So now I want to figure out what is 200 multiplied by 500. Okay, that's a hard calculation. So let's think about it. So this is really 2 multiplied by 100, and I ought to do 2 multiplied by 100 first. Well, that's what 200 is. And then I want to multiply the result by 5, multiplied by 100, and then I ought to do the multiplication of 5 multiplied by 100. So I really am putting these bars to represent parentheses saying that you ought to do this calculation first. Okay. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the order of multiplication, and this is, you'll have to think about it. This is going to use the commutative law, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to interchange this order. Okay, so there's an other step that I'm sort of skipping. There's an associative law step that I'm skipping. If you want to think about it, you can think about it. But I'm going to interchange the order of these two. So I'm going to write this as 2 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 100 multiplied by 100. Okay, and now you can see that this answer is just 10, and you know that multiplied by 100 hundreds. So these are 100 hundreds. So when I write 100 hundreds, the answer is 100 hundreds. So remember, this is 100, and this is the 100, and here's another 100 hundreds, and this is the 100 hundreds. You can see this as 100 hundreds. And then when I multiply 10 by 100 hundreds, I get 1,000 hundreds. So I can write this as 1,000 hundreds, and that's just 100,000. So now you can see, if you look at it carefully, that you have these two zeros, and these two zeros just flow along. These are these two zeros, which are these two zeros, which are these two zeros, which are these two zeros. Okay, and then you have these two zeros, which are 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 these two zeros, and then this 0, which is a 10, which is this 0, which is this 0. Okay, so the moral of the story is that you're just adding the zeros. So these two zeros plus 2 zeros made 4 zeros, and these are the 4 zeros you get over here, and then you just multiply 2 by 5 to get the answer, which is 10. So now if you were to multiply, let's say 300 by 400, you'd get the answer, which is actually 12 with 4 zeros, and you can work it out and see that it's the right answer. Okay.